Hey, all you super players out there, Ben Lodice, aka 5 Buck Lunch, coming at you with a little bit of a different video today. I wanted to go through and look at the Draftbox 5 cards. A lot of them have lowered in price, and I kind of wanted to make an updated video, kind of taking a look at what cards are there, how much they are, um, whether like they're at a good amount to buy, things like that. So I just sorted TCG player by most expensive in Draftbox 5, and I'm just going to kind of go down and take a look at what's there. There's some really interesting things going on here, especially with the situation we're in currently, where the demand isn't as high as it normally would be for a set like this. I'm actually going to go into that later, where how that's going to affect when you should pick up these cards if you want to buy them, assuming you haven't bought them already, which a lot of people have. But some people are waiting because they want the price to go down, and there's going to be some actually interesting interactions with that. But first off, I just wanted to point out that the Draftbox has settled at around $100 on TCG Player if you want to buy an unopened Draftbox. And there are a lot of them in that price range. It's not like there's just a few of them. So all those people that are trying to sell the draft boxes for like $120 right when they came out, it's pretty much settled around MSRP. It hasn't dropped below that though, which is interesting, even with the lower demand, which shows that probably a healthy amount was printed, which is nice because we've had that issue in the past. The most expensive card, and I'm going by TCG Player low, so you want to look at the green number over here, not the green number underneath the card, because that's the market price, and market price is useless. So is the KO Kengoku, which is interesting because not a lot of people predicted this. Uh, when the set was first announced, everyone was looking at Riran and Jiren and a lot of other things. This card kind of slipped through the cracks, but it is a very good card. It has the ability to wipe your opponent's board, or you can discard it to kill a barrier card, essentially, which are both really good effects. The barrier removal is red leader specific, though, so it makes it a little bit more narrow. I think 30 is still a bit much. I think this card still has an inflated price. I think it'll settle around 20-ish. We'll have to see, though, because it comes down to, like, are you going to play this or Vegeta? And I think a lot of times this will be relegated to the side deck, which means it won't be quite as expensive. Ribrianne is around $30. This is the card that I think will probably end up being the most expensive card in the set still. We'll have to see. $30 isn't a terrible price for it. It might come down a little bit, but I don't expect it to drop more than 25 at the most, at least not for a long time. There's just too many ways to abuse the card. Uh, Next up, I want to talk about both of these. Beerus and Weason, Liqueur and Corrin are both sitting around $20, give or take, a dollar or two. I think Liqueur and Corrin will stay around here. It is a little narrow, so it could drop to maybe 15, but I don't see it go much lower than that. I think these cards are kind of annoying to pull because there's a lot of them, the Destroyer and Angel Rares. And it's just so powerful, drawing two cards and stuff, but it is very narrow in what decks you can play it in. So this is a card where since the meta is so undefined right now, if it comes out that the Broly Surge deck is like tier 1, really, really high, this card is going to probably spike up a little bit. But if it doesn't see much play, it's probably going to drop a little bit. Probably a pretty safe buy. Beerus and Whis, relatively safe. I think it'll drop a little bit, but I think that Invoker is good enough where this card will just be $15 to $20 for a while just because people really like the Invoker deck, which will drive up demand. Next up, we have Bergamo Ferocious Roar. This card is interesting. It, so, like, tapping your opponent's cards by your skill and then paying 2 to play this from hand could become an actual deck. This card is really hard to decide. I don't think it's worth $20 because that ability is so narrow, and you're really only going to play if you're playing like Crusher Ball and cards like that where you can tap your opponent's cards on their turn. Otherwise, I don't think it's really good enough. Mind you, it is still a really powerful effect, so this is one of those cards that's going to be really hard to decide. I think $20 is a little bit too much for it still. Uh, Koitsu, I think, is a very underrated card, even at $20. This is a card I think might be a good idea to pick up now. The reason for that is there's literally no reason not to play this card in your side deck. It's black, it can go in every deck, it's filters, and it stops your opponent from playing counterplays, which is very, very good. This also can be thrown in as like a 1 or 2 of in almost every single deck. So I think this is a card you might want to pick up now. I think this has a card potential to be expensive in the future. We'll have to see, but just the genericness of it is really powerful and it has a really powerful effect that'll pretty much always be relevant. After Image Slash, so this only becomes good if generic blue ever becomes good, which right now it's just not. Uh, it's a very good card for like fun play, not really competitive play, but we'll have to see. If It could be good in the future if a deck that it fits in better exists. It just doesn't right now. That being said, 16 isn't too bad. I expect it to settle around 10. Um, but that might not be for a while. It's one of those cards that's going to kind of tick down slowly. Imperial Inspection is still too expensive. $14 for this card just to get critical, I think, is too much. It'll probably settle around 8, would be my guess. Beastly Maiden is a very interesting card and something that might be worth picking up now. It's Green Leader specific, which is always drives down the price of a card if it's specific to one color. But negate an attack and then KO a card for 2 is very, very strong. So we'll have to see. 13 is not a bad. This is a card that would be worth picking up right now, I believe. I'm just gonna do the first couple pages. Green and Martine for $10 I think is pretty worthwhile. Again, I think these Destroyer and Angel rares are going to be relatively hard to get. I believe you get 4 of them in a box, and there's a lot of them. There's like, was it 16, 12, something like that. It's a good amount. So like it's going to be pretty hard to pull play sets of these, so the good ones are going to be very worthwhile. This is a card that might be worth picking up. It's $10. For reference, a card that does a similar effect is Frost Deadly Poison, and that card is like $4 for a common that came in a structure deck. So I think this is a card that's very much worth picking up right now and will probably be more in the future. This one's interesting. I don't think 10 is a little much for this. It's the one that just has Invoker for 2, or Invoker, Offering for 2, and which is a very good card. And like if you play red-yellow, I can 100% see this card just being played because it's just generically powerful. $10 isn't terrible. It might come down $1 or 2, but I don't see it dropping that much more. Protector of the People for $10. Very solid. Will be played a lot of decks. Not a bad card to pick up. Analaza for 13, probably going to come down a little more because I don't know what exactly deck you're going to play this in right now. Like there's some like side decks and stuff, but I don't think it's good enough. Divine, if you want to buy individual packs, they're about $9, which puts this at the fact that like now we're down to cards where if you pull this card, it's worth less than the pack, which is an interesting thing to point out. Not hot on this card. I think it's going to drop down. I don't think this card is very good. Because of the 5 or more energy clause. I think this card, don't buy this card yet. Same with Hit. I'm not hot on this card either. Some people like it. I do want to point out the funny Jiren is $6, where it was originally the most expensive super in the pack if you pre-ordered it. I was saying this originally when we were looking at this card. It's just too hard to play. It's got to be the last card in your hand, so it fits in maybe Handless Majin Buu. That's like the only deck that can efficiently play this card. It's just like it's a cool effect and all, but it's just not good enough. And here we're getting down to kind of the more generic things. Once these supers hit around $5 is usually the point where you could buy a set for $20 and you might lose $5, but you're not going to lose that much. So at this point, we're getting cards where you could probably just buy them. I do want to point out, Not Even a Scratch is $6, $7, and this I think is going to be the most expensive rare in the set by far. It's really hard to say. This card has the potential to go up. If they don't reprint this card, it's just... I hit a button I didn't mean to. If it's just generically good enough where if you want to throw a couple of negates in your deck, this is just amazing. And any deck that cycles cards, this is amazing. So, like, this card has the potential to easily be a $15 rare at some point. Buying them at $7, I think it's actually a really good idea to do that now. Flight of the Grand Eagle is another card that's really, really strong that I'm surprised dropped so fast. This is another one that would be pretty good to pick up a set of. And now we're kind of just getting into some other generic things. Like I said, if a card is $5 and you want it for your deck, just buy it. It's at the point where like spending $20 on a set is pretty reasonable. But yeah, those are kind of the big things. The big things I would pick up is Not Even a Scratch, and what's the other one? Not Even a Scratch, Protector of the People, and the Kataplaza, I think is the black 1-drop. Obviously, this card is a little more expensive, so you have a little higher risk with picking the set up, but I think this card's going to be a big card going forward. It's just really good against counters, which are always going to be a relevant part of the game. But yeah, big things I wouldn't buy yet, by the way. Frieza Imperial Inspection is the big one. I think that card's in the drop. I also wouldn't buy Bergamo yet. Um, Other than that, a lot of these cards have kind of settled where they were. I do want to point out, though, and you're going to have to suffer through my wonderful, terrible art now. But I want to talk a little bit about how the quarantine is going to affect the prices from Dropbox 5. They dropped off pretty quick here, which is a little bit unusual and not what people expected, but that's due to the quarantine where there wasn't that much of a demand because people are very much, well, I'm not playing tournaments. Why would I spend money on these cards? I'm just going to wait until the quarantine's lifted, all our LGS is open again, and we can go back and play the game. So this is kind of a graph of, very rudimentary graph of what normally a set does is set comes out, demand's high, everyone wants to play the new cards, and as the supply increases and the demand goes down, they kind of table off and flatten out at the actual price. And things that affect this are if it does well in a tournament, obviously it'll spike and go back up. If a set is not printed enough, like Dropbox 4, prices will go up, things like that. But mostly it's playability in Dragon Ball that increases price. But we're going to have a little different situation here where there's going to be a huge demand increase when the quarantine ends. So prices are going to spike mostly in Dropbox 5, but also a little bit all across the board. So if you're planning on playing a deck that plays heavy Dropbox 5 cards when the LGS is open and our locals open again, you're going to want to buy your cards before the quarantine actually stops. And we're getting pushed close to the point now where hopefully the government's going to issue a date where the quarantine will end. It'll probably be sometime late this month or early next month, but you're going to want to buy your cards right before that announcement hits because prices is going to spike almost immediately when they make that announcement because people are going to go, all right, I want to make my deck now so I can go back to locals and play. And it's going to increase the demand by a lot without increasing the supply. Now, after that happens, and a month or two after we start playing, we start going to stores again, just like normal, the demand's going to go down because people are going to have bought their cards, have their decks. The meta will start to solidify a little bit too. That's going to be really wonky in terms of what actually ends up being good or not once we get actual tournaments going again. So basically, I want to say you want to buy your cards if you can. Obviously, with the situation a lot of people are in now with layoffs and stuff, you're not going to be able to spend, $150 on Dragon Ball Super cards. Please don't spend money you can't afford to spend. But if you have the money and you want to pick up these cards, a good time to do it would be in these next 2 weeks before the demand increases. So yeah, I just wanted to go over that a little bit. It's kind of interesting. We've never really been in this situation before, obviously, and I want to know from you guys, what do you think is the most overvalued and undervalued card out of all those cards I previously mentioned? Am I wrong? Is Bergamo's Secret really OP? I'm interested to hear from you guys because what I'm saying is speculation from history of playing card games in general and dealing with being a vendor and stuff like that. So I want to hear from you guys. Am I horribly wrong? Am I off base? Are all these cards going to tank? Are they all going to spike? I just want to hear some things from you guys. Go out there, stay in, play some Super, go out there, find some friends to play on Octagon or something. But keep playing the game. We've got all these new cards to play with, and it'll be really interesting to see where the game goes in the next couple months. Please like, subscribe, hit me up on Patreon down below. And everyone, stay healthy, stay safe.